Out of bondage and now I am free. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Greetings and salutations. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another edition of Revolutionary Voodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Come on in, welcome, come on in. All is a blessing. Greetings, beloved. Welcome, welcome. I'm longing for my family, coming back to you. Come back home to Africa. Come back home. Come back home to Africa. Come back home. Greetings, greetings. Eshuale buana kosi were awo onlo uto ni iwo ara afambo osi obatalami itani ebo onilio aban eshu. Eshu is a respected elder who flogs, confronts, and uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you. He causes scatter to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshishe, Ashe. May our Ebo reach a rune. May our Ebo be accepted. May our Ebo allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say Asheo and Ashe. Divine all blessed greetings and salutations. You are now sitting live with the Divine Prince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagoon, Oloye, Hoodoo, Obeya, Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo, world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, my affirmation, reverberation, my reiteration, and it is indeed my ever-living reality. It is crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my teaching, my walk, my works, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. And it is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we're challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding. That place from where I begin, that place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe, ashe, oh, ashe. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021, and I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you now live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum universally from this working temple of the House of the Divine Prince, Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central LLC, in this legendary, historic, beautiful, and most enchanted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, baby. The land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this spiritualist hoodoo obeah life path and journey, passing down the great obeah stick, along with the knowledge of the life-giving herbs, roots, plants, rituals, minerals, traditions, and indeed our history and our sacred stories. Denise Augustine wants to remind you to visit us for your tour plus experience, and particularly now in this new season of COVID-19, we have a completely new and evolved experience for you to be a part of. So please visit us at www.oursacredstories.com. And of course, always remember to pause and breathe again. And remember that all is truly and indeed a blessing. Before moving forward, understanding that the creation of sacred space is critical to all that we do, all that we say that we are, all that we truly be in this divine moment in time space. Reminding you that we stand on the shoulders of mighty ancestors. Mighty ancestors. And it should not be just in the month of February that we acknowledge mighty ancestors. Those of us who are operating in this culture traditionally, authentically, organically, we acknowledge our ancestors several times a day. But certainly every day, we acknowledge those powers, those forces, those people who came before us and now give us our standing, our being in this present moment in time space. For you non-spiritual people out there, ancestral memory survives in your blood. That's science. That's science. Ancestral memory survives in your blood. Your ancestors are your first line of defense. They show up first. They're there to last to leave. For indeed, they exist in your blood. Even at that moment of conception, the blood was there first. Your ancestors were there first. And so we acknowledge our front line of defense, our first go-to in any endeavor, light or dark. We seek our ancestors in all things. I'm truly humbled by my consistent participants, listeners, viewers. Welcome so much, Matthew Ferguson. Peace and blessings to you as well, beloved. S. Marie, divine, all blessed, peace and love, joy and prosperity. All is a blessing. Neophyte Bokur, one of my faithful co-hosts. Ashe, beloved, peace and blessings. Nia Lloyd, thank you so much for being here with us. Always consistent, Nina Lloyd. Thank you, the K-Way. Greetings, beloved. Hidden Realm Sorcery. Peace and light to you as well. And Crystal Lynn Witt. I'm so grateful and thankful for those of you, the most consistent, the most present. I'm most thankful for you. I'm indeed thankful and grateful for my entire listening audience, but I'm here for those who are here for what I have. I know some of you are just spending some time. Some of you are just passing through. Some of you are just looking to be entertained. And indeed, I can be entertaining, okay? But that's not what this is. This here is our sacred space. This here is our sanctuary. This here is our virtual way of coming together as a community, across ATR, across Voodoo, across Palo, across Kendable, across Lukumi, across all the traditions that exist within that umbrella of ATR traditions. I'm also grateful for my universal, my global listening audience. And I want to welcome a new listener, a new listening country to our audience, and that is the Democratic Republic of Congo. Welcome, Congo. Welcome, Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for Cameroon. I'm grateful for Ghana and Nigeria. I'm grateful for Benin, Egypt, Morocco, Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, and of course, all the global places from where I'm listened to from where I'm experienced. I'm grateful for Venezuela and Argentina and Peru, and of course, Brazil, my sister temple, my voodoo sister temple, some of you know, is in Brazil. So I'm always grateful for my listening audience from all parts of the universe. Thank you, Europe, for being here, Canada for being here. I should say the UK for being here, Canada for being here, Australia, Belgium, and of course I am listened to from Italy, France, Germany, Poland, Sweden, Finland, even Russia and China. I'm always amazed when I have listenership in regions of the world where I can't even speak the language, regions of the world where I've never been. So it speaks to the power of this technology to not only grow our reach, expand our presence, but to be edified, to be taught, to acquire mentors within this tradition from the most organic locations possible, from the roots of many of our practices and beliefs. We have that opportunity. I'm always shocked by those of us who spend all of our time in Facebook, all of our time in Instagram, but don't use your Skype, don't use your Zoom, don't use your other tools and mediums to indeed reach out to our people as they might be found all over the world. And I'm grateful for Brazil and Dominican Republic in particular. These are two places that I have active voodoo presence in. These are two places that are actively involved in my ability to come to you and reach out to you each and every day. And some of you know by way of my Instagram that I do have some things in the works. Just know it's coming. Just know I get booked. And we talked about this, I believe, in our very last show. Just know it's coming. I always believed, I've always known, I've always understood that my opportunity was coming. And so understanding we create and recreate our reality with our mouth each and every day. You can't speak death into your own life. You can't speak negativity into your own demonstration. You can't always speak judgment into your own demonstration. Remember that before it escapes your lips, it's got to be crystallized up here. Before it comes out of your mouth, it's got to be visualized here. And if you're not seeing what you want to see, you've got to alter the vision. You got to change your vision. Vision boards, a very new and modern tool, but very powerful one in assisting us in creating and recreating our reality. Clip those news clippings, print out some pictures from your internet and paste them to your vision board and visualize the reality that you seek. Visualize the reality that's in your best interest, that mirrors your best image. I want to show all support for Texas and all of us who endured this unusual cold winter, snowy, icy winter that we've all sort of passed through. New Orleans has passed through the eye of the needle. I've got the back door open. It's probably close to 60 degrees, maybe even warmer in my city today. But I'm humbled by that which my Texans have had to endure. Neophyte Bokor is in Texas. Hoodoo occultism is in Texas. And many of those people have gone without power, without heat, without water, and without any kind of answer, really, from their governing powers, their governing forces. Um, and certainly this isn't the time for me to be petty, but I've never really cared for Texas a whole lot. It's not my number one go-to place. If a hurricane were to come through here now, Texas probably wouldn't be first on the list of places that I would have to go and shelter in. But I'm indeed humbled and grateful for my audience there, my community that lives there. And we empathize and we sympathize and we stand in the gap with you and for you. And certainly of my family, my godchildren, my students, my clients, all you have to do is email me if you have a need, if you have a desire, if you have a want. And we will surely make sure that it gets to you. So I'm grateful. And it was a cold one, even here in the city of New Orleans. There were times my house didn't raise above 30 degrees, 32 degrees for several days, that sort of cold winter snap that we had. I was able to protect my garden. I'm grateful for those of you. Blessings from Austria. Thank you so much, Austria. Beast Poet, we welcome you, beloved. Thank you so much for being confirmation of the extent of the reach of this show. But I am grateful for those of you who showed concern about my kumquat trees and my blueberry, my banana trees. Bananas will always come back. Indeed, they froze. Of course, not to the root, but the fruit that was on the trees froze. The leaves, the foliage of my banana trees indeed did freeze and burn. But it will come back. My garden, and people ask, well, how did you protect your garden? Sheets, blankets, fitted linen from the bed. And not just summer variety, not that smooth variety, but winter bedding. Some of you who experience a winter, you know what I'm talking about. Winter bedding. It's a little thicker than regular bedding, than regular spring and warm weather bedding. And so that's what I use to protect my garden. My sage didn't even faint. My sage still looks just as vibrant as the springtime. My basils still have fruit and flower on them. I had to remove my in due diligence remove my kumquats before the freeze. So that day before, I went out and took all the remaining fruit off of my kumquat trees and brought them in. But they're doing fine, and everything is in rebound. Even my aloes. Many of my aloes completely survived the cold weather without cover, without protection. My most favorite aloes I in the house, those that I could, and the others I once again threw a cheap blanket over. So don't get rid of that old linen unless you really have to. Don't get rid of those old blankets your grandmama and them gave you. They absolutely have a purpose when you got to protect against a harsh winter, such as what passed through here. But I'm really heartbroken about the state of Texas. I can't say that I'm surprised. Again, it's not necessarily one of my most favorite locations. I'm not surprised, but I'm very hurt by it. Our beloved, my godmother, Voodoo priestess Ava K. Jones, lives in Houston. And when I last checked, she was doing okay. She had drinking water, she had food, but she didn't have power and she didn't have heat. So many of our elders, 70, 80 years old, 90 years old, have survived based on the wisdom of their elders, the wisdom of their ancestors, what they endured even before us, and they knew exactly what to do. And so I'm grateful. I'm eternally grateful. I'm grateful for my godchildren that sent me resources. One godchild sent me heat. Okay, who does that? Made sure I had heat and had it delivered to my house, because he understood that this house has 16-foot ceilings, And it's very hard to heat. We don't have winters like that in New Orleans. So when we do get them, it's very difficult to heat a house of this size, and particularly on both sides, the temple and the store side, and of course the side that I'm often broadcasting from. So I'm grateful in this moment. I'm grateful in all things. I'm grateful, and gratitude brings more blessings. Gratitude feeds the blessing. Gratitude ensures that you continue to receive the blessing. Gratitude and just a little bit of humility. Just a little bit of humility. Check in on my switchboard. I was having just a little bit of problem with my switchboard earlier, but I think everything is good now. So if you'd like to call me at area code 845-277-9143, you may very well do so at this time. Remember to press the number 1 on your telephone keypad, and I'll be more than happy to unmute your mic. Craig Burns, greetings, beloved. I'm not sure what happened with the notifications. I programmed this show yesterday. So you should have at least got something yesterday or last night. Just before we aired, as I was chewing my turmeric root, y'all see the orange? That's turmeric root. Okay. Just as I was chewing my turmeric root right before the show, Cox decided to climb the pole. And for those of you who are here during the pre-service, from 11 a.m. to noon, when I play all the educational videos and give thanks and praises to the spirits and the deities and the powers of the day, you may have saw my brief text that we might lose internet temporarily. So that has already happened. They climbed the pole. They did whatever they were supposed to do. But I'm not sure how that would have interfered with the more recent notifications. But thank you for noticing. Thank you for asking. And thank you for showing up, even without a notification. I'm grateful for you, Greg Burns. Thank you so much, Hidden Realm Sorcery. Thank you. And I also as well am grateful for you and acknowledge your ancestors, those ancestors who ride with you, who showed up with you when you showed up here today. Hidden Realm Sorcery said, when you said bananas, I saw a boat. To me, that symbolizes the return of our ancestors, but through us, we got to heal. Blessings to you, Prince. Infinite abundance to you and yours. Hidden Realms, you kind of reading into my topic today. I want to talk a little bit more about that healing. Whoo, Tamisha Gilbert, girlfriend, you just cussed me. She says she on this damn computer doing her taxes. Girl, you just said a cuss word. Ooh, that's one of my least favorite tasks. Is having to operate a business and a ministry and itemize and do taxes. Last year I paid somebody famous, somebody well known here in my city to do that process for me, and I know even less now than I did before. Okay, I'm even more, confounded by that task than I was before. But it's something that we all have to do. Yeah, we need a new vision. We need healing. You all are throwing out powerful, powerful words today. Healing, vision, and how those two things play a role in the manifestation of our lives. In the manifestation, greetings, Naima Cotton, in the manifestation of our reality, and particularly how we see it manifest in social media. And let me be clear, if I've never been more clear before, I'm not anti-social media. I'm everywhere, from LinkedIn to Facebook to many sites that many of you probably don't even know of. I'm on UK social media sites. I'm on African social media sites. So I'm not anti-social media. But I think what's being missed, and it's not a generational thing. I'm learning, I'm seeing it in the 20s, I'm seeing it in the 30s, I'm seeing it in the 40s, I'm seeing it in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Don't be so quick to believe the illusions that are presented before you on the internet. You cannot get this in a book. You cannot get this in 100 books. You cannot learn this in a Bing search or in a Google search. And if we believe what Instagram says and what Twitter says, everybody's a hoodoo practitioner all of a sudden. Everybody's a root worker all of a sudden. And I've said this before on the show. I'm gonna leak a little bit of my truth. Oh, baby, I'm hard on the copy and paste. I'm quick on the screenshot button, real quick. And I have screenshots.
Hello, is a call?
Greetings. Yes, it is. I'm in the middle of a live broadcast. How can I help you? Okay, I'm confused because someone has already come out to the house and been in my house. And I just saw another, and it might have been you, just went up the pole. And the guy who came in the house made it clear that what's going on is not happening in my house, that it has everything to do with what's going on that pole. I'm not getting consistent internet. Sometimes it's in and out, in and out. And particularly if I'm trying to use a smart TV, if I'm trying to use a cell phone, it's problematic. And it's been problematic since I got Cox. Yeah, he claimed he was able to detect a problem from the poll that only you all could address. Well, I appreciate it. In all due honesty, I'm on the radio and visually on podcast right now, so we both can be heard. Okay, all is a blessing. I'm not gonna let that throw me, y'all. Okay, I'll cuss and deal with that in my own shadow work later on, but I'm not gonna let that throw me. But thank you so much, Craig Burns. I appreciate that. And not only will the exhibit be here at the Presbyterian, which is the Louisiana State Museum, if many of you are not aware. It is the oldest state museum in the city and in the state. And so that exhibit will be there for about 6 months, I believe, well into the fall. So for those of you who still make your journey here to the city, please go to the Presbyterian. It's right in Jackson Square, and you can witness Mystery in Motion. And the exhibit will then be going in early 2022 to Paris, France. So my Parisian listeners who are, and my Northern African listeners who travel a great deal back and forth to Paris and to that region, please take the time to visit the exhibit when it makes its way to Paris. I'm trying to find the name of the museum right now because I certainly can't pronounce it very well without seeing it in my face. And sometimes I can't pronounce it well even when I see it in my face. Let's see. What's the name of this museum? Okay. Right now, I'm not seeing it, but as soon as I find it, it's kind of hard to do the show and search for stuff at the same time. But as soon as I find it, oh, wait a minute, it might be here. Okay, the exhibit is now featured at the Presbyterian Museum, the Louisiana State Museum, here in Jackson Square, French Quarter, New Orleans. The exhibit is called Mystery in Motion, African American Masking and Spirituality in Mardi Gras. and it opened on February 13th, 2021. I was there. Some of you have seen the opening videos. It was very nice. It was very nice. And I'm not just saying that because I'm prejudiced. It was very nice. It was very nicely displayed, organized, showcased. It was more than I could imagine. It was bigger than life. The name of the larger expedition that it is a part of, Les Black Indians de la Nouvelle Orleans at the Musée du Croix Branly Jacques Chirac. Musée du Croix Branly Jacques Chirac in Paris, France. And it will open there, I believe in January, maybe February of 2022. And I plan to be there. I plan to be there. So thank you, Craig Burns. I certainly do appreciate that. Yes, Sandra C., if you believe what social media says, everybody's a diviner. Everybody's a hoodoo practitioner. Everybody's a root worker. And it's amazing to me that just like being a pharmacist or a doctor or a chemist or a mathematician or a master astrologer, it's amazing to me how little they understand about the tradition and how unaware they are that those of us who've done our homework can see through the illusion. A good friend of mine that I was introduced to by way of Queen Quet in the Gullah Geechee Nation, we had almost a 2-hour conversation just about this very thing last night. He's in a different age demographic than I am. He's 28. So sometimes I like to get the opinion. I like to see through the eyes of someone much younger than me, how they interpret what's going on right now, how they interpret what they see right now as it relates to this demonstration of this in social media. And it's a lot like TV. It's a lot like media. I don't care how, let's use beloved Iyanla Vanzant, for example, Fix My Life. I don't care how much ministry it is, how serious it really is, how deep that work and that process really is. Because understand, Iyanla works with those individuals, those families, weeks before they show up on Fix My Life. She got a whole team of practitioners, healers, ministers, priests and priestess who work with those guests weeks before they show up on the show. But once you turn those cameras on, it's television. It's television. And sometimes she stops in the middle of the processes and says, look, are you here for TV? Are you here for entertainment? Are you here for social media? Or are you here to get your healing? So when we see these demonstrations in social media of what people think root work is, what people think conjure is, and they feel emboldened because they read 5 books, 10 books, 20 books. They feel emboldened. And they don't understand that sometimes, many times, the authors aren't even in our community. The authors are anthropologists, historians, storytellers, authors, and writers who sometimes don't have a whole lot of involvement in these traditions. And so just like National Geographic of old, back in the 50s and the 60s and the 40s, they went to various parts of the world and they filmed from their perspective, through their lens, through their eyes. And you have to be able to discern truth, but you can't discern what you don't know. You can't see or spot what you don't know. And I'm tickled every day that I talk to a client, a caller, a godchild whose eyes are now really open. I hear it at least 10 times a week. Oh my God, I never heard that before. And at first, because they never heard it before, they don't believe me, because they ain't never heard it before. But then once you get that knowledge, that information, and you start going through these profiles and looking at what you see, because ultimately it shows up in the demonstration. You can fix your mouth to say anything. You can fix your mouth to claim any title, any tradition. You can fix your mouth to say anything. It is your demonstration. So while you checking your words against a book, while you checking your videos and your pictures against a book, you know, I'm checking your demonstration. And some of you who are claiming to be healers need healing. Some of you who are claiming to be workers need work. And how do you then heal and you sick? How do you then fix the loving relationships when your loving relationship demonstration is all over the place? And I'm a keen observer without getting drawn in. I observe everything. I'm a Labor Day Virgo, 66, 1133, three double numbers. Okay, I don't miss very much. When y'all think I'm not watching, I'm watching. What you tweet, what you Instagramming, I'm looking. And just because I don't click like or leave a comment don't mean I ain't seen it. Sometimes a like is not a like, but an acknowledgement that I see you. Okay. Now, if I add some words to it, that might be a little bit more specific. But don't assume that the like and the love is just that. Sometimes it's, okay, this is a reminder that I've seen this post. Sometimes it's a reminder that, okay, let me keep that back here. Because it shows up in your demonstration. You can't claim one day to have done 7 readings and they was all on point and you so connected with your God self, and then 15 hours later you talking about your lack of sex. You talking about how jacked up your feelings are for the opposite sex, you know, or for whatever sex you're of interest in. My point is, it's in your demonstration. The maturity don't show up in your demonstration. You can't say I'm a mentor and a teacher and then you're demonstrating childlike behavior in social media. The two things don't add up. Hoodoo occultism, I just invoked your name, beloved. I pray you all are all right. You went through one thing and came out of that and went into another thing. I don't know how y'all dealing with Texas right now. I just don't. Go ahead, Neophyte Bokur. Come on in, beloved.
Ashe, peace and blessings, family. How is everybody doing? I hope everybody made it through the eye of the storm. I've been making sure that if you are in my email, I want to make sure I send you some sort of weather report to make sure that you're, aware of your surroundings. Make sure that you know that how far the storm is out, how close is it, if it's going to pass soon. I got to do that while I'm out here driving to make sure that I'm safe and driving in the middle of that eye at all times. If I don't, my wife will come and kill me. So yeah. This storm is crazy. It's a lot of ice. The last time I was in Florida, I said, hey, look, watch out for this ice storm that's coming. And everybody looked at me kind of sideways, like, Florida, ice. Okay. Don't believe me if you want, but
yeah.
and
I'm
then
a truck driver, especially a long haul truck driver, because my family, I come from a driving family. We drove somewhere every year, every summer, every holidays. We were driving somewhere. So sometimes you can outrun the storm. You can drive down the rain. Sometimes we would drive and look for the sun. That was one of my mom's favorite activities. Let's go find the sun. And so we would drive. So yeah, I'm sure you can see some of the cycles in the weather long before sort of the community does. And you would know what's coming.
Yeah. It's the best way to stay safe. I don't like having to put chains on my tires. That's a lot of work. I mean, 18 wheels. I mean, I got super singles, so that's a much wider track, and you got to put chains on that whole thing. I don't like doing it. I'm gonna be real honest. That's one part of my job I never really look forward to. So it's critical that I make sure that if I don't want to do that, I got to stay on top of my weather. Fortunate for me, I got plenty of people out there that are keeping track of it, and I subscribe to those people as well. No matter how their outlook on life, they still have that positivity. It's great stuff. What about this healing though? Yeah. When I get settled down, I get to my place where I'm going to be settled, and I get a chance to sit amongst the people. The very first thing that someone asked me is about healing. For some reason, I sit down at a counter at a truck stop or something like that, and my energy just kind of fills the room. And it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 people that want to actually sit down and have a chat and get things off their chest and really speak on what's ailing them. You know, I give some suggestions and really listen to some of the problems. And a lot of people suffer from the same heart issue, same void inside your chest. It's like a void esteem. Like you don't have self-esteem right anymore. You know, you have a void esteem.
A void of self-love. Yeah, a void of self-love. A beloved, again, someone else in my social media chain, I'm not going to call her out individually, but over the weekend, she posted something to the effect of, I just want to say I don't believe in love anymore, for whoever's listening. That's one of those random things they do in Twitter, to try to gain likes and followers. But my immediate response was, the one who chooses not to believe in love anymore has chosen not to believe in themselves. Love is an inside job. It is an inside job. It has very little to do with what's going on out here, what he or she does or doesn't do for you, how they should. That typically speaks to something else. A need for security, a need, for financial support, a need for, other forms of reinforcement. But that's not love. That's not love. And as I was saying just before you came on, there's so much right now that's just bubbling over in social media. I think we're nearing a breaking point with it, with this whole trending tarot reader, healer, practitioner thing. And people are about to shift, which I'm old enough to have seen the shift before. I saw the shift from Dr. York to Hebrew Israelite, to the next thing. I've seen the shift, and many of these people are about to make the new shift. Whatever's popular next, whatever's viral next, we're about to see that shift. But I also believe that what we're seeing is a active and direct result of COINTEL. Now, when I first mentioned this, people was like, well, what is, COINTEL? If you understand what the counterintelligence program was about, it was about getting involved in our business, getting involved in our organizations and our groups, those places where we found a sense of self-empowerment at a communal level, and breaking that up and destroying that. And so some of you seem to think that it passed away with history, like the civil rights movement. None of that has passed away with history. It has only evolved into the new thing. It has only caught up with the technology. And so now they don't need to have a agent come and infiltrate your community. They got plenty of you to do it for them. They got too many of you to do it for them. And so they are feeding misinformation in an attempt to, one, bastardize the tradition, suck all the power out of the tradition, suck all the mystery out of the tradition, but also make it open up universally to come one, come all. Hence, voodoo is not witchcraft. Voodoo is not paganism. Voodoo is not new age. It's none of those things. And that's where the battle lines are. And some of you have gotten real aggressive about preaching your wrong information, about regurgitating your incorrect information in social media. And, I only have enough time to care about my godchildren, my clients, my initiative. I don't get caught up in the battle trap in Twitter. I see you, I might click like, I might not, but I keep rolling, because I know it's going to be a waste of my time and my energy to try and recorrect you anyway. Or you're going to take that information. Queen Quet said this yesterday in one of her tweets. These honey chillin' read her books and see the videos and the documentaries, and then 5 minutes later regurgitate it on their platform as if it's something that is understood. It's one thing to read something and think you understand what you've read, but it's a whole nother thing to understand something that's a part of your experience, something you've done a few times before, something you turned over in your head a few times before. And as I said a moment ago, we see you. We see right through that. So, and if that isn't enough, you know, if that isn't enough, there's that whole commercial element to it. The selling of products, the opening of candle stores, the opening of your internet botanicas. And a retail license does not a practitioner make. Just because you own a store don't mean you care anything about what's going on in that store. How many of y'all got Arab-owned liquor stores in your community? And for the most part, these Muslim Arabs don't drink, don't smoke really, but they'll sell it to you. They'll provide it to you. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's just now in blackface. It's just now coming through people who look like me and look like you and look like the god and look like the goddess. And that's another trick, the fake profiles. If I see another Instagram profile with, you know, Dr. York or Dr. King or Malcolm X as your profile picture, and then every post underneath that is black this, black that, cultural this, cultural that, and you claim to be educating the community, all the while hiding your demonstration, all the while hiding your face. And you can't teach what you don't know. You can't give what you don't have. You can't foster forward that which you can't personally demonstrate. And it shows up in the demonstration. That's where we see it, is in your demonstration. You can regurgitate Queen Quet's words, but then what's your behavior? How does your demonstration show up? That's where the giveaway is for those who know. And before I let you back in, Neophyte Boku, I want to say one more thing. We have a proverb here in the Deep South. Those who know don't tell. Those who tell don't know. Those who know don't tell. And those who tell don't know. An authentic practitioner is not going to violate their contract with spirit to post recipes in social media, to post what's inside their taurines in social media, to post any level of detail about what's sacred about these traditions. And for the most part, your book authors don't do it either. Louisa Tesh ain't giving you any mysteries. She's not sharing the secrets of these traditions. She's sharing her experience. Maureen Gonzalez Whiffler, Santeria Experience. Hence the title, Santeria Experience. And she shares her experience. She don't tell you the details. She don't tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. It would instantly invalidate someone as legitimate to do so. And so in the absence of information, some folks make up shit and then post that. Burn this candle, burn that candle, mix this together, mix that together. Oh God, my eyes just roll back in my head. And then I keep scrolling. If you notice, I don't advertise. You don't see me tweet, I got space available. Beloved so-and-so, I called your number and left a message. I still got time to give you a reading. Y'all don't understand that 90% of that is fake. And the other 10% just don't know any better. Just don't know any better. But it speaks more to who we are. Why do our people continue to be so gullible to that, so open to that? Oh, wow, he's got gold chains and he's got on the latest fashions and, you know, he can bust a rhyme or two. And before you know it, you got several babies for the man. He ain't produced not one resource. He ain't committed. You know. Now let me check my chat, Neophyte Bokur, if you had something you want to share.
Yes, sir. Trying to adjust my camera here. Apparently, got some interference and whatnot. All these trucks and their high vibrational engines just disturb everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to share something earlier. You went right on into it. It was right on the edge of my mind. I was just actually diving into some deeper study because I was on another panel with having a discussion about how do we combat this what do they call a relationship war, this war between the sexes, between right now, especially with African American black men and black women.
But
I mean, if you can't see that it's fake to begin with. I mean, it's staged, not staged like it's just a show, but staged like there's little traps set up for you to fall into, little pitfalls for you to start pitting against your better half. It's crazy how most people don't see it as a trap, right?
Well,
and they
I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting, but it starts out as a trap just in the posting. Understand, just like you, not you, beloved, but people watching, they're looking for ratings. They're looking for followers. They're looking for how many people click like on this post. And that's an illusion. I told y'all that before. Just because they got 20,000 followers, 30,000 followers, 100,000 followers, don't mean they have a legitimate business, don't mean they have a legitimate ministry, don't mean that they're doing anything full-time in this tradition. I know millionaires, billionaires with a B in our Twitter circles that ain't got but 200 followers, 500 followers. Some of the very book authors that you all seem to love to like, I'm friendly with. Those people ain't got no followers. They don't have time to sit and tweet and retweet and Instagram and re-Instagram and do all that it takes to create that buzz. And you all get caught up in the buzz. You all get caught up in the buzz. Another trick is multiple profiles. They have 20 other profiles. I know one in particular. That's how I figured this out. They got 20, 30 other fake profiles, various races, various ages, various, statuses in life. And they comment on their own posts. They reshare on their own posts. And it makes them look more prolific than they really are. But all you got to do is watch their demonstration. Catch them at 1 a.m. when they start that emotional complaining post. And then you see what's really real.
Yeah, now I remember what I was going to go into. The social media, right? And COINTELPRO. A lot of people don't put those two things together at all, because that would be a conspiracy, right? And nobody wants to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy. However, if you remember in history, you had the Banana Republic. The CIA and FBI literally collaborated to overturn governments. And one of the more popular ones that they overturned was in the Banana Republic. They had a whole division in the CIA called, what was it? The Rumor Network. That's a play on words. The Rumor Network, and it's a legitimate, not declassified portion of government, or not government, but the CIA, the division of the CIA that is documented. It's documented. It's been declassified so that the public can now actually read up on that history. how is the rumor network not the social media network that we're dealing with now? What's the difference? The internet. That's it. Now it's publicized. Everybody can participate in it. They don't have to search for anybody's information anymore. You put it on there voluntarily. You give it up. You're doing it for free now. It in a perpetual state, like it's like autopilot. It's all these programs now are on autopilot, and it's just collecting data, collecting more and more data. The more data they have on you, the more they can use it against you, and the more you can use it against your loved ones.
Right. Because, like you said, it's a trap, you know. And so, if I want to draw in, if I want to track, particularly this audience, all I have to do is put up a extremely black page with extremely black information, with several pictures of Oshun and Gimiya and Shango, and you all are going to follow. You all are going to show up. They don't have to. The agent don't have to infiltrate your church. Don't have to infiltrate your community. Don't have to infiltrate your barbershop anymore. It's too easy to identify the most likely target, as Neophyte Bokor just said, because they know everything about you. Now I have no fear of that. I'm operating a legitimate business, so I maintain consistency to my identity across the networks. I don't have one username over here and another username over there. I'm not on the dark web. I'm not anywhere trying to mask or hide or disguise my identity. And believe it or not, that makes me less of a target than many of you. My purpose is clear. And I'm sure I've been tested. I've gotten weird messages. I've been approached by odd people. You know, I've had phone calls from strange folk, you know, so I know I've been tested. But many of you are still self-proclaimed students, self-proclaimed learning. You know, you're on what I call the soul journey, you know, and so you're looking at this and looking at that and peeping in on this and getting involved in this group and that group without any real protection. And the most troubling thing is the self-made practitioner that needs help. That's one of my pet peeves. I need help now. It's urgent. And then they spend the next 3 paragraphs trying to validate how experienced they are in this tradition. But you need my help. Oh, well, I got it over here, but I ain't got it over there. Then you're not whole. You're not a whole person. You're not a whole entity to then be offering service to other people, you know? And we're so easily caught up into it. I just don't understand. That's why I reach out to the 25-year-old, the 24-year-old, the 28-year-old, the 32-year-old. I want to know, what are y'all seeing? And what's the pull? I get a lot of random links, a lot of random videos, especially in Instagram, from people who never said hi, people who don't follow me, but this is so deep and so important that I should just stop now and go and check it out. You know, and it's often nonsense. It's often stuff that I've already seen, already been through, already processed, already studied 30 years ago. And again, it speaks to your spiritual maturity in the traditions. I can tell by how excited you are by a 40-year-old book, just how long you've been in the practice, just how long you've been in the tradition. It's much harder to do with my older audience, my more erudite and well-studied audience, but it's very popular and very common in social media today. And so I'm predicting we reaching a breaking point, just like with QAnon, just like with the Trumplicans. We reaching a breaking point. And some of you are going to move on with this pop cultural demonstration of what ATR is. And others of you, like Oshun, Yemi, and myself, are going to go deeper into the tradition and really seek leadership, mentorship, eldership, authenticity. You know, Oshun Yemi, your post also reminds me of something else that I often say. With all the Orisha and Yoruba and Ashes and Alafias that's being thrown around in social media, how often do Yoruba people respond to that post? How often do Yoruba people comment on those posts? And we know they're online. The Yoruba are some of the most prolific of ethnic groups that is online. I talk to them every day. But just like me, they see that foolishness, and it's not their position to correct you. It's not their position to tell you, oh no, that's not what it is. It's really this. Because see, that's ego. And that goes back to what Neophyte Bokor was just talking about, that trap. There are those ego posts that get you to comment and get you to share information and get you to tell secrets. And that was what the originator of the post set out for, was to gain access to, was to learn better. Beloved yesterday said, oh, I asked a question and nobody in social media could give me an answer. Yeah, in social media. Did you reach out to Haiti? Did you reach out to Nigeria? Did you reach out to Benin? We've got to do better. We've got to do better. And I can't keep, I said this early in the show, I can't keep exerting energy on it. My godchildren need that energy. My clients need that energy. Those who are serious about this tradition need that energy. So I'm not going to battle you in social media. I'm not going to correct you. I might unfollow you. I might put you on mute, but I don't have that time. It takes a great degree of spiritual immaturity and ego to go back and forth in the battle. Oshun Yemi mentioned early in her comments that back when she and I first met virtually, Yahoo 360 days, the battling was common in Santeria among the Latin community, Hispanic community. What was right, what wasn't right, what was correct, what wasn't correct. I mean, that's the first thing I saw in 2005 when I entered social media, was the battling back and forth. And then it was voodoo. Well, what's real voodoo and what's not real voodoo, and what's Haitian and what's Louisiana, and many of those people, am I right, Oshun Yemi? Many of those people have faded into the background. We don't see much of those people anymore. I can count on one hand some of those practitioners that still are representing themselves as practitioners today. It's a trending thing. It's a trending thing, just like R&B, just like hip hop, just like rap. It's a trending thing, and it's popular today, and it falls out of favor, and then y'all move on to something else. And in the process, COINTEL, our community is left in shambles. We're left to re-educate and reteach and recorrect, when it's easier to just follow a straight line. The shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line. That's a mathematical truth. Yes, and not everybody is a priest or priestess. Not everyone is called to be a priest or a priestess. Why is it that no one wants to operate in the musical aspect of the tradition, the cultural aspect of the tradition, the marketing and advertising aspect of the tradition, the connection of resources? Nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to be Mambo, Hogan, Ianifa, Babalao. You just got your hand to Ifa yesterday, and you are Ianifa offering to do services tomorrow. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. And I beg the Yoruba, the Ewe, the Fan, the Akan to get involved in this conversation. And they won't, for the most part. Some of you remember, Oshun Yemi might remember, a decade ago, we did Ifa Wednesday. May Baba Ifa Sakin rest in a room. We had an Ifa Wednesday. And so we had on legitimate Ifa practitioners, both here, but also from Osogbo, Nigeria, present. Those shows weren't popular. Y'all weren't interested in learning the truth. You all wanted to know about sex and yemaya and the lottery and quick magic. You all wanted to know about witchcraft. And this ain't witchcraft. This ain't magic.
As those kind of shows need to be in the front row with 2 notebooks. That's my approach on everything. You got to take 2 sets of notes, right? I mean, like I said, it's been a hell of a long journey for me. I went about it the wrong way. I am prime example number 1. Don't do it by yourself. I'll say that immediately, and I will be honest with that. I didn't have a teacher. I had one in high school, and she taught me a lot. But as far as like the actual tradition, the painstaking amount of work that you have to go through, and the pitfalls I was just talking about that I fell into, most of the times, not like from what I see nowadays, there's no coming out of those pitfalls now. Now they're hamster wheels. You get stuck in one of them pitfalls nowadays with this knowledge, you'll be stuck in that hamster wheel for who knows how long. Going around in circles, chasing your own tail, thinking that you're progressing when you're missing valuable information. I was listening earlier to someone speak about the Kemetic followers nowadays. The guys that go around saying Hotep and everything. I love that. However, Hotep is not Imhotep, right? You're talking about like the letter of your name versus your whole name, who you are, who you identify as. The Kemetic sciences, they operate in 3s, but everybody is just stuck on the spiritual part of it, not realizing that you don't have chemistry without the Kemetic belief system itself as a whole, not just the spiritual part. You don't have string theory without Kemetic spiritual practices. You don't have quantum physics without chemistry. That means that if you don't have that whole system together, you don't have a TV. You can't watch TV without understanding what plasma is. Plasma is found in Kemetic science, not just a matter of being spiritual and using these crystals to clean your energy and whatnot. Each one of these crystals are used in the commercial industry. Hematite and magnetite, 2 different elements. You're walking around with it on your necklace and whatnot. That's cute and everything, but this is a commercial product. You don't have commercial grade steel without this. And they are mining this on such a large level that it would blow your mind to know that this, just having a couple of hematite crystals, is less than pennies in comparison to the mines that they have. And if you were really looking at it, these scientists are trying to mine Mars. They're mining Mars. Why? Why would you need that? Well, the whole planet is iron ore. Iron ore is magnetite and hematite. Your Kemetic science and your spiritual oral traditions and oral history tells the story of how these elements come to be and how they function in your everyday life, how they were used and how they are used today. When you're looking at like Sekhmet and Hathor, 2 elements of the same being, but everybody thinks that they're separate. They're 2 different entities. No, they're the same, right? But I'm just pointing those things out, not to be facetious or anything. I'm just saying that you really have to dive deeper into the whole understanding, not just the nice, pretty beads and stuff that we do.
Right. And stick around long enough to actually learn that practice. Oshun Yemi One just made the statement. The Kemetic community was crossing over into Orisha. Then Orisha was crossing over into Loa. Then Loa was crossing over, and it's a sort of we say it's a human thing, but it's really a Western notion that they all somehow equal one another. Well, I can understand this because I understand that, and they don't have the root.
Right. Prime example. When the Kemetic community crosses over into the Orisha, they don't realize that the Orisha is what the Kemetic ancestors were talking about. They said that they were passed this information down, but from whom? Well, the Sumerians. And the Sumerians said that they got it from someone else. Who do you think they were talking about? The Orisha came before all of those things. That's the depth of it. That's how far down the rabbit hole it goes, Alice. It's amazing once your brain starts wrapping around the fact that your Orisha predates even Sumeria, where the Kemetics get their history from.
Okay, now that's not exactly true. Because the Yoruba culture is really a descendant of many traditions that sort of met up in Ile Ife, West Africa. So your Kemetic gods and deities existed long before the Orisha, historically, beloved. And each ethnic group then came up with their own language, their own way of sort of describing certain entities, within nature. I say it every day. There is no voodoo, there is no Ifa, there is no Kemetic science without nature. And I like how you said, it's more than just the spirit path. They can't connect that to the earth path. They can't connect that to the heavenly path. And that's a necessary triangle: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Mother, Daughter, Holy Spirit. That chain cannot be broken. That's the basic foundation of how we manifest life on earth: physicality, spirit, and then that immortal, unknowable element. But it moved from the east into the west. The Yorubas, in their telling of their own story, moved from the east into the west. And then they divided off in Ile Ife to Igbo, Ewe, and to some degree Akan, which is a whole nother language. I wonder why people don't appropriate Akan deities the way they appropriate Yoruba deities, because it's not popular. It's not easy to Google. It's not easy to Bing. It's not easy to gain access to. So I think on the one hand, we're taught that it's human nature to reduce things down to its common denominator to make sense. It's human nature for us to try and see something, hear something, experience something, and then relate it to something that we believe we already know, we already understand. But many are coming into the ATR traditions with no understanding, with nothing to compare it to. And it's too easy to compare it to Catholicism. No, we masked behind Catholicism. Voodoo doesn't equate to Catholicism. Catholicism doesn't equate to voodoo. And so people try to do the same thing with voodoo and Orisha. What is Shango in Yoruba the same thing as Shango in Haiti? No. Is Legba in West Africa the same as Legba in Louisiana or Haiti? No. And just like we change, we grow. Science says that every cell in your body is regenerated every 7 years. We change, we grow, so too does the spirits. So did the evolutionary process of spirituality and religion. I also like to talk about, bringing the deities, these powers, these spirits into the new world, and then having to confront enslavement. white supremacy, racism, forms of brutality that had not existed before. And I sort of credit that for sort of the aggressive, more shadow worky edge of how these practices show up in the new world. And once we got out of the battle against the system, the battle for our very lives, we now have nothing more to do but battle each other. It's to go after each other, to blind, to block, to project, you know, onto other humans, which once was used for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of the society. So that's, I just want to add that part, beloved. The Orisha weren't first.
The reason why I came to that idea is just off of reading into astrology to a point where I saw different things intersect. Take for example, the Greek gods. A lot of the Greek deities, the pantheon of the Greek, are found in our astrology. That science going into dealing with the movements of the heavenly bodies or the planets is something that keeps coming up in oral traditions. Take for example, the Australians. Their history, their oral traditions going back 40,000 years in dealing with the heavenly bodies. The serpent deity, Crayola, that came down looking for its children, its lost children in their oral tradition, baffles me, because it's the same Creole serpent in the Aztec or Olmec civilization in Mexico. I mean, same exact description. A feathered serpent. You know, this is oral tradition, and that's a lot of distance to cover for us humans when you're dealing with that time that they call the dream time or the first time, like how the Cometics call it. The Cometics call it the first time. And I'm like, okay, well, that means my timeline is way off, and I need to go back and start looking at logistically, what did the planet look like in the geography? What did the planet look like going back that far? In doing that, you start looking at different landscape. Landscape starts unfurling different things that can only happen by certain weather patterns. Take, for example, and last example, the water damage found in the enclosure of the Sphinx. There was no rainwater in that time period, except for between 11,600 years and 12,000 years ago, meaning that Sphinx had to be there beforehand. Right? That's 12,000 years. That means that this whole idea of the pyramids in Egypt and things of that nature being 7,000 years old is off. So I'm just speculating that there's some things that really need to be re-looked at. There's a lot of history that needs to be time corrected.
And I agree with that. And I think to some degree science is beginning to admit that their timing wasn't always on point, that they didn't always have the right information, the right science to sort of piece things together. I also want to note that even the ancient Egyptians, the Kemetic people, suggested culture and civilization long before them. So we know that there was a time when there were great civilizations all over the world that have not only fallen out of the books of history, but to some degree have fallen out of the reach of archaeologists, save for the new forms of technology that are now evolving, like that photo imaging, you know, from satellites now, where they can literally look into the ground and defined buildings and housing and structures that we just can't see naturally, with our eye, just walking through a particular area and or region. Also, when you spoke of geography and topography, the idea that the continents have moved a great deal over time also is something that I think we neglect in the conversation. And so just maybe, what now is divided by water was once upon a time linked, by land. We look at Australia, is it a trick of our mind that if you just flip Australia, it fits perfectly into that space? Is it a trick of our mind that Africa somehow fits right into the Caribbean if we can move those pieces back together? So you hear about Gondwana and other names for Earth in cultural traditions that suggest a more unified structure. I'm thrilled about what might be hiding underneath that ice, in Antarctica,
Right. I mean, it's a whole, they don't call it the Arctic Circle for anything. I mean, it's an ocean. There's no real landmass to be found there that's not already underwater, submerged underwater. And our ancestors knew how to navigate it. Is proof in their ancient maps that were technically kind of ripped off by Alexander when he, quote unquote, conquered Lower Egypt. I mean, it's cute and everything, but the timeline, I still think is just off. I guess one of my favorite things to be curious about and really try to look into is India, the Indian Ocean. Not only do we have these land masses that once were together, but if land masses were in different positions, that means that the water was in different positions too. That means that if you go back into the maps, you'll see that what is now Indian Ocean was an ocean before. That water wasn't there. That was lower landmass, right? And oceanographers are finding out that there are monuments in that water that you can't. There's a whole bridge that's clearly man-made that is talked about in the Rikvanas in the Indian tradition.
I mean, North Africa wasn't always desert, and archaeology has now found not only structures, and by the way, structures that mimic Atlantis. There's a particular structure. I want to say it's in. Let me look at the map. I believe it's in either Morocco or a country just east of that. But they found by way of satellites this imaging that mirrors most perfectly the Greek telling of what Atlantis was and what it looked like. But yet that area now is completely covered in sand. We know that once upon a time Egypt was driven by the flooding of the Nile River. Due to science and humanity, that flood cycle doesn't happen anymore. And so now we're getting a completely different topography of that region, that in ancient times didn't exist, would have been unknown to even them. So I agree with you 100%. Timing is off. The telling of these stories is off. And the one thing that you mentioned and Craig Burns agrees with that sort of unifies many of these cultural traditions is the sky and what they were able to see and map from the sky. We know the stars and the positions of the moons don't just shift radically. And what we're seeing now in the nighttime sky really represents an ancient time in history. So cultures have been better able to sort of map their story and their spiritual path more accurately through the sky. We're trying to figure out what Stonehenge is or was based on its relationship to the sky. We're trying to figure out the Great Pyramids of Egypt not just as funerary tombs or funerary monuments, which has really been greatly disproven, but in terms of their relationship to energy in the planet, but also to the sky itself. So you're bringing up some really valid points, and I would like to get some other people in on this conversation.
Yeah, please.
Especially the queens before 2 o'clock. So come on in, call in, turn your camera on. We welcome you into the conversation.
I think one of my favorite things is another one of my favorite things is at home. I'm from California. A lot of my family is from California, but it brings to mind the San Bernardino area. There's a giant petroglyph, right? You have your hieroglyphs, you know, things carved into stone, but then you have these megaglyphs or petroglyphs that are carvings in the landscape that you can only really do. You can't see them from on the ground. You have to be elevated. You have to be up in the air in order to see these hieroglyphs, these giant hieroglyphs carved into the landscape. And one of the reasons why they called it the Arrowhead city, or San Bernardino is Arrowhead, or Lake Arrowhead, or Arrow Highway, is because there's a giant arrowhead carved into the mountain that if you're not really paying attention to it, you'll blow right past it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you're on the freeway far enough on one of the overpasses, you're up high, you're elevated, you can look directly at the mountain and see that there is an arrowhead pointing straight down into the landscape. Not up, but down. That's monumental. That's like your brain will explode once you start paying attention to this. And that's not the only place. It's several places.
Oh, wow. Louisiana, Mississippi, Illinois are full
Kentucky.
of great mounds, petroglyphs, pyramids, for lack of better words. And,
Yes.
and people don't even pay attention. I lived once upon a time in Kirkwood, Missouri. I had to travel back and forth to SIUE, Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. And those of you from that region know I had to pass that great mound every day. Every day I would pass a great pyramid mound structure from our indigenous people. And I appreciate you bringing the indigenous Americans into the conversation, particularly in terms of timing and earth change. Because again, science is now having to admit our timing is way off. You know, indigenous Americans existed in this region much earlier than we thought. It's impossible that they all came across the Bering Strait, you know. Right. So again, it suggests some land shifting, some land movement, but also the evolution of technology. They're still trying to figure out how they manage Easter Island without an ability to, you know, navigate, you know, great depths of water. You know, yeah. How does this culture just appear on this island out in the middle of nowhere? And so they're suggesting that they came from another island or another location. But I still believe and speak to the idea that many of the land masses were more solidified than what they are today. And whether that movement was caused by earthquakes, asteroids, in some cases, it's bodies that came in from the sky that hit the ground and imploded and had enough power and force to move a continent, you know, a few inches, they say. But when we look at the world map and the length of time that it would take for the masses to move organically, then we have to start looking at retelling the story of humanity.
Right.
And our length of time on the planet.
This is great for how you start your healing process, because if you know some of this stuff, you can't be tricked anymore. I mean, if you weren't skeptical at certain things before, if you understood a lot of this stuff, you can be like Prince, the beloved new ancestor. Yeah, one of his favorite things was saying, "You can't trick me,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can't play me." And the more of this unraveling that you can do for yourself by studying, the more they don't have an upper hand on you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I say your opposition, your whatever is the opposition in your life, whatever you want to call it. You won't go into it.
You're telling my story. I came out of trauma. I came out of pain. I came out of chaos and found myself on the street at 14, 15. And praises to the ancestors. I was supposed to be a statistic. If we believe the government, I was supposed to be in jail. I was supposed to be dead. I was supposed to be a crackhead. I was supposed to be a whole lot of things. And it was the leaders, the godparents, the elders within these traditions that took me in, that fed me, that made sure I was secure, that corrected me when I needed correcting, that educated me. So people often ask, well, how did you end up here? How did you end up in Voodoo? How did you end up being an authoritative representative of Voodoo? I started this journey in self. I was just like many of you. I was just trying to get me together. I was just trying to understand me. I was just trying to heal me. And in part of that, you know, at the time I'm reaching out to God, God kept pointing back to myself, and myself kept pointing back to the origins. And I learned early on that our origins extend beyond Africa. I have since done my 23andMe DNA, and 23andMe has a component that the other services don't, and that's Neanderthals. 23andMe can determine how much Neanderthal blood you have, and hence the movement of humanity. So we're taught and we understood that all humanity came out of Mother Africa, humanity. But what about the Neanderthals? Help me out, Neophyte Bakuda. It's a whole bunch of names. The Neanderthals, the Cro-Magnums, all of these humanoid forms that were on the planet before, quote unquote, humanity evolved. And so now they're able to trace that interbreeding, that intermixing. I know that's nasty for some of y'all to think about, but you know, Neanderthals having sex with humanoids, you know, and creating diversity, you know, on the planet. Dravidians, you know, when we think of Southeast Asia, India, we're talking about Dravidians. So my earliest ancestors were Dravidians. My earliest ancestors came from Asia, Burma, India, somewhere in that Southeast Asian region, before the human genome came into the mix for me. So we've been miseducated. It's not you. You're not slow. You're not late. You're not behind. It's not personal. We have been educated in this dispensation of humanity with this great Western education that many of us claim to have. You know, and I like to follow numbers. Americans aren't the most educated people in the world. Americans are not the most educated people on the planet, you know, and I trust these indigenous folks, these quote unquote third world folks. I often trust them more than I trust modern humanity. Because thank you, Craig Burns, they still in touch with the sky. They still in touch with the earth. They still in touch with spirit, uncorrupted, undisturbed. And so I'm much more likely to believe my great-great-grandmother before I believe you. I'm much more likely to call down my ancestors before any God. Some of my Twitter Africans in Uganda, and they don't like that. They like to invoke the Lord and God and Jesus, you know, and sometimes it's really overt. I know they just trying to get me worked up. It'd be really overt. And then I always respond, all praises to the ancestors. Give thanks to the ancestors. So again, we got this thing where if I just can make it to Jamaica, Haiti, Nigeria, Brazil, I'm going to somehow get more close to my root. No, your root is right here in your blood. And so in that healing, getting my mind right, getting my body right, they were able to speak and I could hear them without background noise, without distraction. I'm here because of my ancestors. Praise Jesus. And if I haven't said it before, thank you, Marshall Warfield. If I haven't said it before, the Black woman is God. The Black woman is God. That's science, not cultural, Craig Burns. The Black woman is God. If humanity came out of Africa, then she came out of the belly of the Black mother. And I say, praise Jesus. Praise Jesus. I learned that from Marshall Warfield. Not Jesus, Jesus. And so we flipped in terms of how we view the world. Once upon a time, all humanity understood God to be a woman. All cultures understood God to be a woman. And there was a transition. Some cultures call it a war, a battle. When you get into the creation stories of the Maasai, and some of the other Kenya, Southeast African ethnic groups, they talk about a conscious deception for men to steal power from women and take leadership. And when we look at all indigenous, the Nordic, the Aztecs, the indigenous European people, all of their creation stories talk about a time when God was woman, when woman was dominant, and some battle, some war taking place to sort of switch power. And just to bring one more topic in there, because you know I'm a ancient alien enthusiast. Some people say, you know, that aliens have interfered with humanity, that there's no way humanity could make the jumps in technology and even mental and physical evolution that we've made from humanoids, from mammals like apes and monkeys. They believe there's no way we made that jump without some kind of divine interference, some kind of alien interference. And it's easy for me to imagine an indigenous people not necessarily exposed to a great deal of technology, seeing things that look miraculous, that appear divine, other humanoids, other life forms coming from outer space. You're naturally going to say, oh my God, that's a God. Oh my God, that's a power from some, you know, and we haven't considered alien intervention because up until recently, we didn't have the technology. And so now, as a neophyte Bocour so eloquently explained, timelines are being called into question. The presence of humanity on the planet is being called into question. What we think we have known is being re-evolved. And it's not that the rules are being changed. Some of our conspiracy theorists just can't stand change. Oh, that's a sign it's something. No, evolution, growth is a part of humanity. It's a part of life. Your plants grow and evolve. They come in contact with other plants and grow and evolve. And so too do we. And so when you can forgive yourself, when you can explore your own ability to evolve and to change, it makes it a lot easier for you to then show that level of empathy for other humans and for other life forms. We are disconnected from where our food comes from. We are disconnected from animals, many of us. We're disconnected from nature. And while I'm on that, I don't like the humanizing of animals either. I don't like the idea that we're going to force my little doggy to be as humanly possible, you know, as I can make it. This is a replacement for my child, or a replacement for me not having love, or a replacement for me not having a social circle, you know, and then we put a whole lot of human mess on these animals. I don't like that either. We got a serious problem with meth heads and opioids traveling the city of New Orleans in the French Quarter with dogs. And it's many reasons why they do that. One, they do it for empathy. Many of you are much more likely to give them that dollar if they say they're trying to feed that animal. Just like a child. except if they had a child on the street, Child Protective Services could easily be called in. Okay, a dog is a whole nother thing. In many cities, many municipalities don't have the funding to arrest you and then arrest and house your dog. So they might give you a pass. And if you didn't know, I just told you why. I just told you why. Many of your opioids, you see them traveling. We got one in my neighborhood, keeps the dog in a wheelchair. I've never seen the dog walk. I'm not even sure if the dog can walk, but he keeps the dog in a wheelchair. And he's really loud. That's why I'm always able to catch him, because I can be in the back of the house and hear him talking. I don't know who he's holding conversation with, but he just be talking and it'd be real loud. And sometimes he be cussing. You know, he got spirits with him. But the minute he gets in front of my house, he tones it down. That's why I believe in the spirit realm. The minute he see me or get in front of my house, he tones it down. But he goes off around anybody else. I remember being a kid on the street, 19, 20, 21, you know, and the wino would be acting out until we pass. And then he would start speaking sense or just go quiet. I've seen enough to trust spirit. I've seen enough to know that they're jinn, that they're demons, that they're other life forms that inhabit this world with us. And it don't make me crazy. I'm every bit in my right mind. Every bit. Okay.
Every time.
Listen, we're going to give it about 15 more minutes. I appreciate your comments, your request.
I see the comments, but we got to get some more people to cam up.
Yeah, people aren't camming up here lately. And I get it. You know,
it's a lot to compete with. A lot to compete with.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm not camera ready. Okay. Oshun Yemi, I'm not quite getting that. She had a whole folder of study on Orisha, then she found that it was linked to Spiritual Baptist. I'm not understanding that. I'm not understanding that. Help me out. If you can, call in, pop in. Hawaiian greetings, beloved. You look like a new participant. We appreciate you being here. All is a blessing. Greetings and blessings to you as well.
Hawaiian grown tarot. I kind of like that idea. I like a lot of the Polynesian history as well, especially when it comes to your Disney and whatnot. I find the similarities between Maui and Eshu to be striking. The same characteristics for some reason. Kind of a shapeshifter, a trickster, you know.
Yes. Listen, Goddess Initiative says a lot of people have no clue that the division between us was before Willie Lynch. I think that's a very valid point to be made. Because, again, because of slavery, white supremacy in America, listen, Black revolutionary folk, I need you to hear me clearly. Conscious folk, I need you to hear me clearly. We have a false narrative based on slavery. It's black and white. It's them versus us. And that dichotomy doesn't exist in that way in other parts of the world. So the idea that can we all just get along? Can we all just support Black business? Can we all just, identify as Black supersedes our awareness of ethnicity. Your indigenous ethnicity, you might be Yoruba, you might be Akan, you might be Fan, you might be Ewe, you might be Igbo. And those people weren't one unified people on the continent. That's how we got here, through war, through battle. Well, we're going to trade off our enemy slaves and let them go off into America.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the Haitians politically deemed everybody who fought as an ally to be now Black. If they wanted to call people Black, that was their reason for going to war with you in the first place. then everybody who fought on our side, which included the Scottish and the Irish in Haiti, you're black now. This is the explanation for the headless horseman, why it was a Haitian revolution that was a mercenary that fought in your civil war. But we won't go into that part, or why there were so many Frasers in California. But you know, again, this you gotta. There's a lot of research for that. It's a lot of digging for that. The Frasers being strawberry Scottish.
Thank you, the overambitious one. Thank you kindly. I appreciate you, beloved. Yeah, that's important. I can remember as a child, my father would mention Irish, but never would explain that. Never would go into detail about that. And some of my regular listeners, you also are aware that my dad is a 33rd, if you understand what that is. So he would say things often over and over again and sort of expect us to intuitively figure it out, but wouldn't go into a whole lot of detail. And so it was during the course of my own study and looking into, and I'm finding that connection between Black people in Ireland, Black people in England. Again, in America, through this tunnel vision of slavery, it's black or white, it's here or there, it's to the left or to the right. And in the course of that, we've neglected that there's a documented footprint of Black people all over the planet, including China, including Europe, including Ireland, including Greenland. You know, there's a footprint of Black people all over the planet. Another misnomer is the idea of race. Race is a human illusionary configuration. Just because I look Black doesn't tell you who or what I am. Just because she looks white does not tell you who or what she is. And that was one of the things that people like Trump and people like Hitler, you know, try to infuse this idea of, you know, it's got to have a certain color hair, a certain nose shape, a lip shape. And that's what initiated sort of the attack on Jews, because they did not see them ethnically as themselves, or even crossing over into one another. And from our modern eyes, you know, you often can't tell or identify a Jew from a white person in our modern context, if you don't really understand who they are ethnically. And their magic book, I like to call the Bible that magical book, talks about talks about a people who called themselves Jews who are not. So we know that there's a political shifting and manipulation of race and what race is. How did the Mayans distinguish themselves from the Aztec, distinguish themselves from, you know, Native Americans north of the border versus south of the border? And is that really real? Or did Mayan culture, Aztec culture, absolutely represent a cultural nuance? How we make our pots, how we develop our houses, how we hunt and gather for food. Race is a completely fictional, made up construct. I've got really good friends that will beat you down if you say they're anything but Black, but could very easily pass for a white woman, could very easily pass for a Black man, and will cuss you out in multiple languages if you say they're not Black. But that's because they know their ethnicity, they know their heritage, they know their background. And the reverse of that is that there are many white people who are benefiting from entitlement in the West who really ain't all that white if we looked at their genealogy. If I had my way, if we're required to have ID and Social Security card, the government should also provide all of us DNA, all of us. And I know some of you find that problematic. You know, are they going to manipulate? They're going to recreate, you know, like they've done. Okay, there's a place for that argument. But I would rather that information were freely available. I personally believe that it would crush racism. Then you would have to be overtly ignorant and racist if we all had availability to that. I've met too many white folks in my life and were able to see right into their blackness. Some of y'all don't want to hear that. Some of y'all don't want to acknowledge the amount of sex that went on these plantations, the amount of mixing that went on in America, not just on the plantations, but in America and anywhere in the world that we see conquering taking place. That's one of the first things they go for is the woman. It's one of the very first things they go for is to impregnate the woman, to marry the women, to merge that culture into their culture and somehow subdue one culture over another. And it's real easy for us to fathom when we're talking black and white. But when we're talking about Aztec, Mayan, the Eskimo people, then it becomes much more difficult for us to overtly racialize them, you know, and not identify what makes them human and individual as a cultural nuance. My ancestry footprint in both 23andMe and Ancestry.com says Indigenous American, and it has evolved. Some of you have Ancestry.com. You need to check your printout because it keeps evolving. It's not changing, it's evolving. And now it has a map, and the map is very specific. Southwest, Southern West, United States, and then it goes down into Mexico and stops right before Honduras, in my case. I found that my oldest indigenous American ancestor was from Dominica. Dominica, not Haiti, not Dominican Republic, Dominica. Dominica is a small island. It sits southernmost of a chain of islands, Trinidad, Tobago. All of that is before you get to Dominica. We don't see commercials about Dominica. We don't see vacation packages for Dominica, though people go there, but they're not publicized like Jamaica, like Honduras, like, you know, Bermuda, you know. So a lot of Americans, they never heard of Dominica, couldn't point Dominica out on the map. So we've got to first do that self-work, do that homework. My first motive is, who am I? How do I heal me? How do I fix and repair me? That was my first motive in following this journey that led me into voodoo and an indigenous practice. But healing is everything. You can't manifest magic and power consistently if you're unhealed. You can't. If you're bombarded with shadow work, you can't even see your own vision of light that you're seeking to create and recreate, and most certainly not consistently. We talked earlier about people on the journey from one book to another, from one practitioner to another, all the while claiming to be practitioners themselves, and still on the journey. I just shake my head. It's tragic, but more tragic is that they're interfering in other people's journey, and so that trauma gets passed along, that energy gets passed along. I'm going to wrap up in about 6 minutes, y'all. Craig Burns is of Irish descent. Yeah, I have some Irish blood as well.
It always brings up the question why you have the mythology of the Doulahan in Scotland and Ireland, and the Headless Horseman in America. How it got there, why it comes in through Florida, which is curious to me. From what I gather, it seems like it would have traveled from the southern tip of Florida, traveling up into Northern Territory, where it would have came face to face with the conflict that was going on there, which eventually turned into the Civil War. It's striking to me because it feels like it carried over from the Haitian Revolution into the Americas. The Doulahan makes its way into the Americas by way of the Haitian Revolution. I'm assuming. I'm kind of speculating here. I'm just kind of throwing. That's what it feels like to me.
Listen,
like the journey of the story.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your willingness to be transparent, live on air. My only question about that is, who was birthing babies before the Haitians got here? Okay.
Yeah.
So the first mother off that first ship, which we know for a fact came from Ouida, Benin, they had knowledge of birthing babies. They had knowledge of not only just doula, but of the secret mystery traditions around women. And so
I mean, the Doulahan, the headless horseman version of the
okay.
Yeah. the doula, but it's the same word. That's what I'm like. The Doulahan is the headless horseman in Scotland, but you have the doula is the birther, and it kind of somehow mixes somewhere. But then one is a scary story, and the other one like mythology, and the other one is voodoo. It's one of those. It feels like it's part of that tool to keep demonizing the spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, speculative. I'm just shooting shots in the dark. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like another way of being able to demonize something that is clearly misunderstood.
Yes. And who is that told me the over ambitious one said that, I think she said to check your results because they're evolving. She's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. I'm now seeing new information that wasn't here before. Now I'm 3% Scottish, and
90
and
seconds.
not Irish. The Irish still shows up very little, but Scotland now is a more specific location for that European blood. Scotland, Norway, England, and Northwestern Europe. Nigeria still maintains its dominance in my Ancestry.com results.
60 seconds.
That would explain the King Tut ancestry to me, because when Amenhotep's family was exiled, a lot of I think the daughters settled in Scotland, and actually that's where you get the Cheddar Man, the black man in that region, and why you get hieroglyphs in Scotland that are kind of unexplained. Mm-hmm. Why the Scottish tradition for marriage is based on the cornerstone. You can only be the king of the land if you have the cornerstone. It's like literally a block with a chain in it, and a lot of ruins and divination practice tends to make it up there by that in that sense.
10 seconds.
It's something that I went into. I don't know. Going on and on.
Yeah. And my indigenous map has also changed. So there's still primarily southwestern US and all of Mexico. That's now one bubble unto itself. Then it completely skips Central America to include Honduras and Panama. It completely skips that. And then my next major bubble of indigenous bloodline is Brazil, which is not surprising. We tend to forget that the largest number of enslaved Africans were taken to Brazil. And then some of us were sort of separated off and transported into the north. We did not all come directly into North America. Not
you
all.
wouldn't happen to have any French Blackfoot tribe in there, would you?
This particular test won't say that. I'd have to do a completely different service to get into Native American ethnic groups. Ancestry.com just gives you the knowledge that you have indigenous blood, and then they give you a map with a particular range of geographic location as to where that blood comes from. So it's Brazil, primarily Brazil. Some of the countries that sit just north of Brazil are also in this bubble. And then the second indigenous American bubble for me is Mexico specifically. And when I say Southwestern America and Mexico, you have to remember that once upon a time, that was all Mexico. Even before the Louisiana Purchase, that was all Mexico. So I'm showing a percentage of Mexican bloodline and then a percentage of Eastern South American bloodline, primarily around Brazil. And then my West African blood has just increased. Things that were already on the map: Mali, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Benin, Togo, Cameroon, Congo, Western Bantu people. But that space has now evolved a little bit. For example, Mali, northern Mali almost reaches Egypt. Northern Mali reaches Nubia. Northern Mali reaches, areas that we now have been taught to associate as the Middle East.
The Maui Empire?
Now,
it's coincidental. But
if we talk about history, you're right. If we're talking about history, then we're looking at the Maui Empire and the reach of the Maui Empire. It goes as far north as Algeria today, Burkina Faso on the southwestern edge. Chad is on my map, which would have been a part of the Malian Empire at that time.
I found something coincidental you might want to dive into. I'm still looking into it myself. Coincidentally, Los Angeles was already established in the 1500s, like around 1530, around the same time that Queen Azinga from Angola was pronounced Queen of Portugal. Kind of around that time where they were colonizing that area. So I'm still diving into it. It's a little weird kind of thing, but apparently Portugal and Spain colonized the western seaboard of the United States beforehand. Like before, I mean, it's weird, but it would explain why you have California being named with Arabic tongue. I mean, Khalifa, that's Arabic. So it would explain, because all of the navigators that Portugal used were Moroccan or Muslim. So it's weird, but I thought it was very interesting.
Craig Burns, I really appreciate your commenting and your participation, and you as well being transparent. However, I just can't agree with, dark skin because of the Ice Age in Europe. We now know that shade and ethnicity has everything to do with genetics, has everything to do with ethnicity to some degree. Once upon a time, Farrakhan taught that, white people were white because of the Ice Age, because of caveman culture, because they were less exposed somehow to the sun. I don't necessarily believe that anymore. I do accept that the closer you are to the equator, the longer time you spend in the sun, you're going to develop a tan, but that doesn't change your ethnicity. That tan wouldn't then be transferred to the child. So I get what you're saying, and I'm willing to look into that. I am going to look into that a little bit more, but I don't necessarily believe that they had dark skin because of the Ice Age in Europe. I think they were ethnically darker than the modern humans that now occupy that region. I think that was some of the confusion when Alexander and then those who subsequently followed went into Egypt, and they looked at skin tone and the shape of the nose, and they assumed these have to be white people. They looked at the technology and said, oh, these have to be done by white people, because the darker people were somehow in their mind too ignorant to create a pyramid or to create deep science. So I think there's still some traces of that approach to race and racism that still exist among all of us, including Black people. You may or may not be aware that shadeism is a very sensitive topic for African Americans. And I don't know to what degree that manifests in Europe. I do have some friends from the Netherlands, Black people from the Netherlands, from various regions, and they talk about the racism that they endured. But shadeism is sort of ingrained in the American fabric. It was sanctioned by the state. It was sanctioned by the government. There was a time, you may or may not have heard, that you had to be lighted in a brown paper bag just to enter certain businesses. So that shade thing, is problematic for all of us, not just Europeans. Black people have an issue. When Barack Obama came into office, when Kamala Harris came into office, that's one of the first things Black people said. They're not really Black. They're not Black enough. They mix with this, they mix with that, until we start looking at the ancestry test. Everybody mixed with something. Everybody's mixed with something, to some degree. So I appreciate you. Please don't stop commenting. I'm not just trying to be critical or criticize. I think Neophyte Bokur understands that. I'm not challenging y'all. I'm just saying I don't necessarily think that's what it is. The idea that somehow the caveman or the Northern European was only light because they had less sunlight. Then we had to factor in the hair. And what became of the hair? What mechanism shifted that humans lost that hair? And not just in warmer regions, but also in cold regions. So I think there's still a lot more to be discovered and uncovered in terms of genealogy and genetics and how that shows up on the planet. And again, let us not forget the intervention of aliens, quite possibly, and their manipulation of humanity to sort of get us to this point. We could go on for sure, but it's already 10 after 2. I'm going to have to break. I got to be more on point with my eating and my drinking water and all that kind of stuff. But I appreciate you, Neophyte Bokur, for always being available to come in and sort of co-host with me, and for all of my lively participants in the chat.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you always having something to say. Oceanus, I agree. I wish the world wasn't like this. I said earlier in the show, maybe before you got here, if we're required to have Social Security card, I think everyone should have DNA. I think DNA would shut down, or at least change the scope of our conversations today about race and ethnicity and what that really is, how that really manifests. Whether it be fur or hair, melanated magic, my point is, where did it go? My point is, what happened to it, and why did it suddenly disappear? And do we blame that on weather? Do we blame that on ethnicity? Do we blame that on genetics? Do we blame that on where a person is located geographically? I appreciate you all coming in. Meet me at high noon again tomorrow, here, same place, same time. Blog Talk Radio, YouTube, StreamYard, Facebook, Instagram. I'm grateful. I'm appreciative. And remember that all is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe, ashe, oh, ashe.
Yo.
Congo Square.
I just realized I talked
The
through
Omas
all of Blog
Indians.
Talk Radio with the mic on mute.
The Omas Indians prepared this place for us centuries before our arrival. A sacred spot where corn festivals were celebrated.
Thank you
The
kindly.
Omas Indians prepared this place for us centuries before our arrival. Congo
All-
Square, a
all is a
sacred
blessing.
spot where corn festivals were celebrated.
Thank
And
you,
as the
Chef
colonizers
Luigi.
came,
Thank you, Arisha. You all are
Our
always
host,
so
the
consistent. I
Omas
appreciate you.
Indians, they pushed aside our hosts. The colonizers came and